So how often do you actually think about the literal roof over your head?
I'm guessing probably never.
Right. Unless it's actively dripping water onto your forehead while you're trying to watch TV, you just don't think about it. We tend to view roofs as these static, unchanging lids on our houses,
Yeah, you put it on, you forget about it, and you just assume it's going to sit up there and do its job forever.
which is a pretty dangerous assumption when you look at the actual physics of what's happening up there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a roof is essentially this highly engineered barrier system that is under just constant, relentless assault.
And that's exactly the illusion we are breaking today in this deep dive. We've been analyzing a really fascinating collection of structural and environmental data focused on exterior architecture.
Yeah, and the data uses Council Bluffs, Iowa as the
Mhm.
primary case study, which is honestly perfect.
It really is because Council Bluffs gives us this massive cross-section of housing types. You've got these, beautiful century-old historic properties nestled right down near the Missouri River.
Right.
And then stretching outward, you have all these rapidly expanding ultra-modern residential developments.
Exactly. And despite the huge differences in when or how they were built, every single one of those structures is facing the exact same aggressive natural threats.
Yeah, but the strategies used to protect them, and I guess why those strategies ultimately fail, vary
I
wildly.
really do.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. Whether you own property, whether you're renting, or you just have this insane curiosity about the hidden mechanics of the world around you.
Dogs, you should.
Right. Understanding how a building's exterior actually functions is just the ultimate shortcut to protecting a massive financial investment. Okay, let's unpack this. Because we are looking at an active, ongoing environmental battlefield.
We really are. And to truly understand why that battle is so fierce, we have to start at the macro level. We basically have to look at the sky.
Right, the weather.
Yeah. Specifically, we need to examine the extreme environmental forces attacking these structures on a daily basis. Places like Pottawatomie County, Iowa.
No. When people think of roof damage, I feel like their minds immediately go to the catastrophic events.
Oh, for sure. The big stuff.
Yeah, severe summer hailstorms rolling through the plains or heavy winter ice accumulation just crushing the structure.
Right, the things that make the evening news.
Exactly. But digging into this data, it's not always the massive headline-grabbing storms that do the most insidious damage. It's actually this invisible daily phenomenon called thermal shock.
Yeah, thermal shock is just a critical concept here. I mean, it sounds incredibly dramatic, but it is a very real, very physical process rooted in basic thermodynamics.
So how does it actually work?
Well, in regions with drastic temperature fluctuations, you experience these intensely hot summer days, followed almost immediately by rapid, sharp cooling as soon as the sun sets.
Okay.
And, as a fundamental rule of physics, materials expand when they are heated and contract when they cool.
So the entire roof is essentially moving.
Constantly. Your roofing materials are like expanding outward during the peak heat of the afternoon and then shrinking back together at night.
Wow.
Think of it like a rubber band that gets stretched out and then snapped back into place. If you do that to a rubber band once or twice, it's totally fine.
Right.
But if you do it thousands of times over years, the molecular structure begins to break down. The material completely loses its elasticity.
Oh, that makes sense.
On a roof, this constant movement severely weakens the chemical sealants that bond the shingles together and waterproof the joints.
It makes me think of a pothole in a road. Like the constant freezing, thawing, expanding, and contracting creates all these micro fissures in the asphalt.
Yes, exactly.
The structural integrity is already gone before you even see the hole. And then when a car tire finally hits it, a huge chunk just breaks loose.
That is a brilliant analogy, because what you just described with the car tire is exactly what happens with the wind.
Wait, really?
Yeah. What's fascinating here is that the sun is often the primary culprit for long-term degradation, not just the wind.
Wait, so the sun is literally dehydrating my roof like a piece of beef jerky. I always thought wind and hail were the only real threats.
I know, right? But the relentless summer sun literally bakes the asphalt shingles. Asphalt relies on very specific petroleum-based oils within its chemical composition to maintain its flexibility and its water-shedding properties.
So those oils are basically the lifeblood of the shingle. They keep it pliable so it can absorb impacts and just, lay flat.
Precisely. But as the roof is subjected to intense ultraviolet radiation day after day after day, those vital oils begin to evaporate and dry out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and once the oils are gone, the shingle matrix turns stiff, brittle, and just highly fragile.
And that is when the car tire hits the pothole.
Exactly.
The shingles are brittle from the UV degradation. The sealants underneath them are cracked and weakened from the daily thermal shock of expanding and contracting. And then, boom, the high plains winds sweep through.
Right. The wind catches the now inflexible edge of a brittle shingle, lifts it up because the sealant has already failed, and suddenly you have a physical opening in your armor.
That's terrifying.
A windstorm might be what finally tears the shingle completely off the roof, but it was the silent, invisible process of thermal shock and UV baking that laid the groundwork for that failure.
And that opening creates a direct pathway for driving rain to bypass the primary defense and just infiltrate the underlying barriers.
Yep, water always finds a way.
So, okay, we've established how the external weather systematically breaks down the exterior. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Because you would assume that the entire threat model is external. The data, however, reveals that the inside of the house is often contributing just as heavily to the destruction.
It's wild. It's an envelope problem, not just a lead problem.
It absolutely is an envelope problem. The danger from within the structure is incredibly potent. But before we diagnose the internal issues, we should probably tell the listener how they actually spot the physical warning signs that this breakdown is happening.
Yeah, it's vital to know what to look for.
Let's walk through those early warning indicators, because some of them are super obvious and some of them are surprisingly subtle.
Right, like the obvious one. Missing shingles.
Yeah, if you look up and see a localized gap on your roofline, you have an immediate breach.
Pretty hard to miss.
Another glaring sign is a visible water stain on the ceiling. If you are sitting in your living room and you see a brown ring blooming on your drywall, water has already traveled a significant distance through your framing to get there.
Which is never good.
No, not at all. But the one indicator that really stood out to me from the sources was the accumulation of shingle granules in the gutters.
Oh, yeah. Finding heavy granule loss in your downspouts is a critical symptom of advanced degradation.
Because they aren't just decorative, right?
Not at all. Those little rough granules embedded on the top of asphalt shingles are not just for texture or aesthetic color. They serve a highly functional engineering purpose.
What do they actually do?
They are the primary shield protecting the underlying asphalt from the sun's UV rays, and they also provide essential fire resistance.
So if you are cleaning out your gutters and you're scooping out handfuls of what looks like, coarse black sand,
Yep, that's the stuff.
that is your roof's primary defense system, actively washing away. Once those granules are gone, the UV degradation we talked about earlier accelerates exponentially.
Exactly. The roof is effectively balding, and the bare asphalt is completely exposed to the sun.
Yikes.
So you have these external signs, the missing shingles, the ceiling stains, the granule loss. But evaluating the true health of a roofing system goes way beyond just walking the perimeter of the building and looking at the gutters.
Right, which brings us back to the internal threat. To truly diagnose a roof, you have to examine the attic space.
Yes.
And this is where the mechanics of airflow and insulation become critical, because inadequate attic ventilation can quite literally bake your shingles from the inside out.
It completely comes down to convection and trapped energy.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, in the summer, the sun is already bombarding the roof from above. But if your attic lacks proper ventilation, meaning the intake vents at the bottom and the exhaust vents at the top just aren't moving air efficiently, the hot air inside the attic gets trapped.
Like an oven.
Literally.
Yeah.
The ambient temperature inside a poorly ventilated attic can easily exceed 150 degrees Fahrenheit.
And that heat has nowhere to go, so it radiates upward, heating the wooden roof decking, which in turn overheats the asphalt shingles from the bottom.
Exactly. You are sandwiching the roofing materials between the radiant heat of the sun above and the trapped convective heat of the attic below.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It forces the materials to operate at temperatures they were never designed for, which drastically reduces their chemical lifespan.
So summer is a massive heat trap. But does that same trapped energy have an equivalent consequence when the temperature drops? Because the data specifically highlights harsh Iowa winters as a primary driver of internal roof failure.
Oh, winter brings a completely different internal threat, largely driven by inadequate insulation and something called the stack effect.
The stack effect.
Yeah, when your home is poorly insulated, the warm air that you are paying to heat in your living space naturally rises. It escapes upward through the ceiling and straight into the cold attic space.
Ah, so it bypasses the thermal break?
Precisely. That escape heat warms the underside of the roof deck. Now imagine you have a thick layer of snow sitting on top of the roof.
Okay.
The warm roof deck melts the snow from the bottom up, even when the outside air temperature is freezing.
Which sounds harmless at first, right? I
Yep.
mean, the snow melts, it turns into water, and water just runs down the slope of the roof.
It runs down the slope until it hits the eaves, the overhangs of the roof that extend past the exterior walls of the house.
Right, the edges.
Because those eaves are hanging out in the freezing winter air and are not sitting over the heated interior space, they remain extremely cold. So that melted snow water hits the freezing edge of the eave and instantly refreezes into a solid block of ice,
And that creates an ice dam.
a literal dam made of ice.
Yeah.
And the physics of what happens next are incredibly destructive.
What happened?
As more heat escapes the house, more snow melts from the center of the roof. That newly melted water runs down, hits the solid ice dam, and just pulls up.
No.
Yeah. Because water constantly seeks the path of least resistance. And because it has nowhere else to drain, the hydrostatic pressure forces the standing water to back up, literally defying gravity, pushing underneath the horizontal edges of the shingles and infiltrating the underlying wood and insulation.
Wait, so it's a structural failure driven entirely by a thermodynamic imbalance inside the house. The heat escaping from the living room is weaponizing the snow against the roof.
That's exactly what's happening.
That is insane. So if I see a ceiling stain, is it already too late? Are my structural frames doomed?
Well, not necessarily doomed, but it means you have a very narrow window. Prompt intervention is so crucial here. If you understand these mechanics, you realize that a ceiling stain from an ice dam means you need to act before that moisture deeply infiltrates the framing and causes catastrophic mold and rot.
Which is why true professional intervention involves a really rigorous checklist.
Right. They aren't just slapping some tar on a missing shingle.
Yeah, they have to inspect the underlying waterproof barrier, known as the underlayment. They check the step flashing around chimneys to ensure expanding metal hasn't broken the watertight seal.
Ah.
They verified that the pipe boots, those specialized rubber or silicone seals that go around the plumbing exhaust pipe sticking out of your roof, haven't cracked and allowed water to run straight down into the attic.
Exactly. It's a whole system check.
Right. So what does this all mean for your wallet?
The million-dollar question.
Right, because we are talking about highly specialized, labor-intensive interventions, and the natural human instinct, especially when dealing with property maintenance, is to just patch the problem as cheaply as possible and move on.
Of course.
But examining this data brings up a massive economic dilemma.
Yeah.
When is patching a localized problem the smart financial move, and when are you just falling victim to the sunk cost fallacy?
It's the classic debate of targeted repair versus complete system replacement.
Right.
If a healthy 10-year-old roof sustains an isolated trauma, say, a heavy pre-branch snaps off in a storm and punches a hole through one specific section. Or high winds rip off a single cluster of shingles on a corner that absolutely qualifies for a localized patch.
That makes sense.
You isolate the compromised area, restore the barrier, and preserve the remaining decades of lifespan for the rest of the system.
But if we look at a roof on a timeline, the lifespan of these specific components reveals a much more complicated reality. You can't just assume every component ages at the exact same rate.
No, definitely not.
Let's walk through the actual data on this life cycle because it completely recontextualizes how you should view maintenance.
The timeline of degradation is exactly how professionals evaluate long-term value. Let's start with the weakest links.
Right. From the data, the first things to surrender to thermal shock are usually the flashing seals around the metal joints.
Yep.
The varying expansion rates between metal flashing and asphalt materials literally pull the sealants apart. On average, resealing those joints is an intervention that only lasts 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years is like a blink of an eye in the lifespan of a house. It requires constant, vigilant monitoring.
And if you ignore that, or if the ice dams we discussed earlier start backing up, the water begins rotting the fascia, the wooden boards running along the lower roof edge.
And those fascia board repairs generally hold up for about 5 to 8 years before the environmental exposure or, clogged gutters compromise them again.
Okay, so 3 to 5 for flashing, 5 to 8 for fascia. What's next?
As we move further down the timeline, you start seeing material failures based on UV exposure. Those rubber and silicone vent boots around the exhaust pipes we mentioned, they just sit up there baking in the sun until they become brittle and split. Their replacement cycle is typically 8 to 12 years.
Wow. And then we get to the shingles themselves. If you have localized high wind or hail damage on an aging roof, a targeted shingle replacement patch is generally rated to hold for 7 to 10 years. But by the time you reach the 10 to 15-year mark, you are frequently dealing with heavy-duty decking patches. This means pulling up materials to replace sections of the actual plywood or OSB board underneath because long-term systemic moisture infiltration has begun to rot the structural wood.
And this is where it hits you. If you connect this to the bigger picture, when you lay those lifespans out on a timeline, the sunk cost fallacy becomes glaringly obvious.
Oh, totally.
If you have a 17-year-old roof and your inspection reveals you need a major decking patch, new fascia boards, and complete vent boot replacement, you have to weigh the high cost of those isolated repairs against the reality of the system as a whole.
Wait, let me apply some logic here. If my underlying decking is rotting and my vent boots are splitting from UV damage, but my shingles supposedly have a 25-year manufacturer warranty, aren't I just putting a Band-Aid on a systemic failure?
That's exactly what you're doing.
I mean, the warranty on the shingle is completely irrelevant if the wood it's nailed to is turning into a wet sponge.
Exactly. You're continually paying a premium to fix isolated components of an expiring system that is going to fail anyway.
Yeah.
You are throwing good money after bad.
Yeah.
In those scenarios, absorbing the upfront cost of a brand new, fully integrated roofing system offers significantly better long-term financial protection than trying to piece together a Frankenstein roof of old and new materials.
Okay, so let's say we cross that threshold. The thermal shock has destroyed the sealants, the UV rays have evaporated the oils, the ice dams have rotted the fascia. We need a complete, total overhaul.
Right.
How does that replacement actually happen? Because to do it right, you can't just roll out some tar paper and start hammering.
Oh, well, absolutely not. A proper overhaul requires building a resilient interlocking barrier from the raw decking all the way up. The execution is incredibly rigorous.
What's the first step?
It involves stripping the structure down to the bare wood just to inspect for hidden rot. Then comes the meticulous application of synthetic underlayment to create a secondary waterproof seal. It requires strategic mathematical ventilation planning to ensure we aren't just trapping heat and baking the new shingles all over again. And finally, precise, staggered shingle alignment to ensure maximum aerodynamic wind resistance.
One of the details in the data that fascinated me was the sheer project management required around the perimeter of the house.
It's massive.
We're talking about tons of heavy, abrasive debris coming off a 2-story drop. They have to carefully shield the landscaping, maneuver heavy machinery, and prioritize the safe removal of old materials. And the most rigorous part.
The magnetic sweep.
Yes. Performing a meticulous magnetic sweep of the entire property when the job is done.
The magnetic sweep is a non-negotiable safety protocol. We are talking about thousands of roofing nails being removed and driven during an installation.
Thousands.
A single rusted nail left behind in a driveway can cause a blowout on a car tire, or much worse, severely injure a child running barefoot in the grass.
It's terrifying.
The liability is massive, which really speaks to the level of detail required by whoever is managing the installation.
Which brings up a very aggressive debate in the industry. Who should you actually hire to execute this overhaul? You have massive national roofing chains with huge marketing budgets, and then you have localized regional experts.
And the data makes a very strong empirical case for the local advantage.
Really?
Yeah. National chains often rely on standardized, one-size-fits-all approaches to materials and installation to maximize their profit margins across the country.
I get the logic there, but let me push back for a second. If I'm a homeowner, doesn't a massive national chain have incredible economies of scale? They have centralized supply lines. They can buy shingles and underlayment by the literal trainload.
It's true.
Why shouldn't I just take advantage of their bulk discount to get the job done cheaper? It's like buying a one-size-fits-all jacket from a national store versus having a local tailor build you a parka specifically designed for a Council Bluffs blizzard.
That is the perfect analogy because taking a bulk discount on materials that aren't engineered for your specific environment will cost you triple in premature failure. A standardized ventilation and underlayment approach designed to handle the dry, arid heat of Arizona is going to fail spectacularly under the hydrostatic pressure of heavy winter ice accumulation in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
So it's a microclimate issue. A national chain might use a lighter underlayment because it's cheaper and works fine in California, but that same material gets shredded by an Iowa freeze-thaw cycle.
Exactly. Local contractors understand the hyperlocal weather patterns. They know exactly how the high winds cut through specific valleys, and they build the physical defenses accordingly.
That makes total sense.
And beyond just the physical climate challenges, local contractors offer a massive administrative advantage.
The bureaucracy.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They streamline the permitting process because they are intimately familiar with municipal requirements, neighborhood zoning laws, and local building codes.
They know the system.
Right. They know the city inspectors personally, they know the specific safety compliance standards for the region, and that localized intelligence eliminates the nightmare bureaucratic delays that often plague national chains. They ensure the job is done not just structurally right, but legally right, the very first time.
So we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We started by looking up at the invisible battlefield in the sky, unpacking the thermodynamics of thermal shock that stretch and shrink the physical materials every single day and night.
Yep.
We ventured inside to explore the hidden dangers of the attic, realizing that poor ventilation and the stack effect can essentially weaponize the heat of our own living rooms to create massive, destructive ice dams.
Which is still wild to think about.
It really is. We broke down the life cycle data, proving why constantly patching a failing 15-year-old system is an economic sunk cost fallacy. And we ended with the rigorous execution of a total replacement, from the physics of underlayment to the liability of magnetic sweeps.
It really emphasizes the central theme of the data. Ignoring a small, seemingly insignificant drip today guarantees wildly expensive moisture remediation and structural rot tomorrow.
Absolutely.
If you see early warning signs, or if severe weather has just cleared your area, that exact moment is when preventative action must be taken to protect the equity in the structure.
It is genuinely fascinating how deeply interconnected all of these systems are. The ambient weather outside, the convective airflow inside, the chemical composition of the asphalt oils. I mean, it is a highly sensitive balancing act.
It is. And, if we connect this delicate balancing act to the broader future of architecture, it raises a truly provocative question based on the source material.
Oh, I bet.
Well, we spend so much time thinking about how our home protects us from the outside environment. But considering that the heat escaping from your very own living room can melt roof snow, create ice dams, and peel apart your shingles, it raises an important question.
Right.
How much of the wear and tear on your home's exterior is actually being driven by how you live on the inside?
Wow.
Especially now, because the entire construction industry is pivoting toward hyper-sealed, ultra-energy efficient, passive houses and smart homes. They're designed to trap 100% of their interior climate.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
If we completely eliminate that internal heat escape, we are drastically altering the thermal dynamics of the entire structure. It makes you wonder, as our indoor environments become perfectly sealed and artificially managed, how fundamentally will exterior architecture and roofing materials have to evolve over the next decade to survive without that natural energy transfer?
Wow. If the internal heat isn't interacting with the exterior materials anymore, the roof is going to face an entirely new set of isolated physical stresses. That completely changes the equation for the next generation of housing.
It really does.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to look up at your own ceiling today and maybe take a quick peek at the structural mechanics operating silently above you with a whole new perspective. Until next time, keep analyzing the world around you and remember that even the most static-looking structures are fighting a complex daily battle right over your head.